Hello and welcome to our next episode where we're going to be discussing mental health and writing and how one impacts upon the other and how we strike the balance between writing and real life and obviously the overall effects of that on our mental well-being. So as we all know as writers, there are incredible highs when you're successful, when things go well for you, but there's also those plummeting, abyss-like lows which we all face as well, in the form of rejections, in the form of not being accepted for a magazine you've submitted to, not being accepted for a programme or a contest online on Twitter. There are so many different ways in which we can be knocked back as writers and not accepted. It might even be as little as someone who's a trusted CP or reader who reads a bit of your work and says, yeah, I don't really think that's working. And you've got to be mentally prepared for that, and your confidence and mental well-being do take a bit of a hit, of a blow every time you get one of those, regardless of how strong-willed and resilient and how much perseverance you have. You still find that difficult. We all do, regardless of how far along in the process you are, how experienced you are, we still feel it. And so really as a writer, you've got to question, can I handle those highs and lows? If you can, then great, and you enjoy the craft and the writing and drafting experience, then yes, writing's probably for you. If you really struggle with that though, and it has a detrimental impact on your mental health, like a serious impact, then you have to question whether A, you need to walk away from it for a while, or B, indefinitely, or C, you just need to work on the balance in your life or the importance that you place upon it and work ways around that so that you can achieve an equilibrium in terms of your mental health. Obviously with any subjective craft, there is going to be a degree of people finding it very hard and eventually quitting or moving on. And one thing I would say at this stage is there's absolutely no shame in saying, yeah, this is getting too hard for me just now, I'm going to take a break, or this is too hard for me, period, I'm just going to leave it and I'm going to go and pursue something else. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, because it is so hard, it is so tough. The mental wear and tear that comes with being a writer is amongst the most difficult things I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I've gone through a range of experiences, a range of different disciplines and crafts and so on, and by far this is the one which has emotionally, psychologically, some of the toughest scenarios that you have to face. And just to talk about mental health just a little bit more generally just now, it's still something which is so stigmatised and not openly discussed in the way that it should be. And it's something that I, as a writer and as a biologist and as a teacher who works with young people and so on, I want that to be open from my own perspective and experiences, and for making it easy for others to open up about it as well. I will happily share everything about it if it means that even one or two other people can look at my experiences and say, yes, that's the same for me, and I'm glad I'm not going through all of this alone. And I think it's something which culturally we need to address in a better way. For example, today I was at the hospital for a physical health checkup on one of my conditions, but the same consultant had expressed concerns about my depression a few months ago and had given me a number of different strategies to try and cope with that. We discussed medication and so on, but we didn't think that we needed that at this stage. However, one of the first things she asked me about today was that, and the way she discussed it with me was in a way that it was very clinical. It was, the depression is an illness, it's a condition which shows symptoms. It is a very real thing. It can be treated in the same way that other physical conditions can be treated, and she dealt with it with the respect and the gravity that it deserves. And mental health problems have often, it's a historical thing as well. If you have a mental health problem, it's dismissed, or that you're a little bit weak, or whatever the experience that you've had with people when you discuss your mental health more openly. And I hope that the more that we share these experiences, the easier it will become for everyone to accept it's a everyday part of life, that everyone suffers from it. Because mental health is it's not a digital thing, it's not a binary thing, it's not where some people have it and some people don't. We all suffer from it to a certain degree. It's a spectrum, and yes, you might get people at this end of the spectrum who rarely suffer from any the major symptoms associated with it, and then you obviously get people at the other end of the spectrum where they are more well known for those mental health issues because they have significant impacts on their life, and then there's a whole bunch of us just somewhere in the middle here where we are actually struggling with it, but we deal with it in our own way and perhaps don't discuss it, and it's maybe this middle section of the spectrum which needs to give more attention to what's going on, to allow others to know that they are not alone. This is something that can be discussed openly, and it's not something to be ashamed about. It should not be stigmatised. So as a writer, where can mental health concerns arise? Well, there are an abundance of situations: rejections from agents, rejections from publishers. It can be as a result of the writing itself. You're blocked, or you have self-doubt and anxiety, or you're just unsure if you're capable of doing it again. You feel mentally worn or exhausted, or in my case, I wrote so many books, so many words over the period of time leading up to getting my agent that I have spent the last year or so recovering, because I was mentally exhausted from the output and the effort that went into not just writing the books but learning craft, doing courses, doing my masters and so on. And that mental burnout is a very real thing, and it can happen to all of us. And one thing again that I would encourage people to do is to share that and to admit that and say, it's okay, I'm going to take a bit of time off from writing because I need to mentally recuperate from that. And one example that I like to cite is the one of J.D. Salinger, who was a troubled guy, but what he made a conscious decision to do was, after Catcher in the Rye was published, he then continued to write. He wrote many manuscripts, but he decided that he didn't want to publish them. So every time he wrote a manuscript, he just stuck it in the drawer and he just left it there. And they didn't find so many of these until after his death. And in a way, that was his way of managing his mental health associated with his writing. He made the choice not to share it with people, not to be judged, not to be reviewed, not to be rejected, and that obviously for him was the best way of approaching things. I mean, there may have been other factors, he might not have thought it publish worthy or whatever, but I think from a mental health point of view that was a smart move from him, and that's something to consider. If you're finding that you can't deal with the rejections or whatever, just say, actually I'm just going to write for me for a while, and everything I write I'm just going to keep it on my computer. I'll read it back to myself in 5 years maybe and consider it for publication then, but for just now I'm just going to purely enjoy writing for the therapeutic purpose that it can provide and serve for people. And that's another important point, is just it can be therapy, just writing and not getting it critiqued and not getting it sent out to agents to be rejected and so on. Just write for yourself, and sometimes that can be all the therapy you need to get you back into a place where you're then happy to share it again. And I guess this is probably a good point as well to discuss individuals. Everyone's experience of mental health and the symptoms associated with it and how it affects you is going to be very different. It's very individual. So my depression is going to be different from your depression and yours and yours and yours. And as I say, it's a total spectrum. So the severity of it's going to be variable. The actual symptoms associated with it, the different conditions are going to be variable as well. And one thing just to remind ourselves is that yes, you suffer from XYZ, but the person next to you who also suffers from XYZ is probably going through a very different experience from you, and their health decline is probably triggered by very different things from you. So never dismiss someone's experience, never say it's wrong, never say, oh, I didn't find that, I thought blah 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 blah. Just accept everyone's own reasons and listen to what they have to say and support them. That is the key. Support them and say, there is a way to come through this. I am here to listen to you, and I'll do anything you need me to do to help you out. And that's actually an offer I would extend to anyone who watches these videos and who is maybe struggling. Reach out to me, get in touch with me on Twitter via DMs or whatever. I'm always there to chat. So what are some strategies we can use then as writers to help improve our mental health and keep things on a more even keel? Well, I think the key word for me is balance, and it's about viewing your writing as important, because it's important to us all, but not letting it mask or cover up other aspects of our life or stop us from doing other things that we really enjoy doing, keeping it all in balance. So, my own situation, I've got my wife and my daughter, my work, my rugby, which I've started to get back into. I've got many other things in my life which I can focus on out with it, and it's still hard to do. Sometimes I find myself stuck at my computer for 4, 5, 6 hours a day and find myself doing something to do with writing, whether it's editing, writing or whatever. So getting yourself that balance is super important. Step away from your computer, go do something else, go for a walk, go listen to some music, go watch a film, go do whatever it is that you need to do to correct that balance, to get everything back in line. Being realistic, setting realistic goals, saying to yourself, yeah, okay, I have all these other things going on in my life, so I'm not going to say to myself, I'm going to set a 2,000 word word count for today. Say 200, 500, 1,000, whatever it's going to be, but be realistic. Something which is manageable and achievable is far better than setting something which is grand and sounds great, but you're never actually going to achieve. So small, manageable, realistic goals. And being realistic in all aspects of how you approach your writing, because we're not going to make lots of money from this. We're not going to get published and be headline makers. We're not going to get a film deal unless we're extremely lucky. We are probably not going to make an awful lot of money out of it. And basically telling yourself that from the outset helps you to manage expectations and stops that drastic plummet and fall in terms of your mood and your mental health and your confidence when things don't go well. So if it's kind of like that old expression, hope for the best but prepare for the worst. So realistic expectations and goals are key to maintaining good mental health. Talk to other people, talk to other writers, talk to family members, talk to your partner, your mum, your dad, your daughter, your son, whoever it happens to be, anyone. Even if you have to talk to the Twitter abyss and just put it out there online and see who's listening to you. Do what you have to do. Sharing things instantly lifts the load. I've found that recently. As soon as you start sharing problems, it instantly lifts the load and makes things easier for you. So talk to someone if you can. As I say, I'm always here if you need to chat to me online at any point, just get in touch. Another really important way to maintain that balance is don't compare yourself to others. Don't look at other people's successes and think, oh, that's where I should be. Oh, that person has been writing just as long as me, now they have an agent and a book deal, I should be there as well. Comparisons are not healthy. They don't help you, they don't help anyone. So view your own successes as the measuring point. Look at what you've achieved. You have started writing. You have the intention of writing a book. You may have finished a book, you may have finished multiple books, you may have redrafted them, you might have done writing programs, you might have been proactive in 100 other ways. And what you have to do is try and focus on those successes, those proactive things you've done, and reward yourself for that, and not focus on the things that others have done or the successes that others have had, because that won't help, and it never has, and it never will. So celebrate your own successes, don't compare to others. One of my last pieces of advice is to try and find yourself people who you can empathise with and who will empathise with you, a writing crew, CPs, a writing group. You can meet those kind of people through Twitter, through contests, through programmes. Put yourself out there, allow yourself to be open to making friendships and connections with other writers, because as the saying goes, an experience shared is an experience halved, and so whatever bad experience you're going through, it'll be half as bad if you share it with other people rather than just keeping it all to yourself. So find your tribe, find your people, find people who can lift you up on the days when you're down and help you through it. And do you know what? I give out all this, I'm trying to give out all this advice, but even for me, I still suffer bad days. I have days of pure self-crisis where I say I can't write anything. I don't know. I'm terrible at this. What am I going to do? And I have other days where things are a bit better and smoother and they go well. And I think every single writer, regardless of what success level they're at, and regardless of what they might say publicly, goes through those periods and they really struggle. And you can put in all the steps in the world to try and help with it. There will still be times where you're struggling. And what you have to do is just say, do you know what? It's not working today. Maybe step away from the computer. Or you say it's not working, but I'm just going to get some words down on the page and I can worry about quality later. Or find some kind of strategy to get through the tougher times, because it's a long haul being a writer. It's not a short sprint, and you have to come up with mechanisms, coping mechanisms that are going to help you through the longevity that is associated with a good career in writing. And I know from my own personal experience that so far has been the case. Just find your coping mechanisms and use those to get you through. And do you know what? It's just writing at the end of the day. It is not life and death. Like I have suffered from many physical illnesses over the last few years. Conditions which, with modern medicine I can be treated for, and I'll still have a fairly normal and hopefully very long life. But it's not life or death writing, and if you can't do it for a day, a month, or even 6 months or a year, that's okay. Take the time off, come back to it when you're feeling in a better place. I think your mental health is far more important than the words that you can put on the page. So if you've any more questions for me, or you want to ask me anything, as I say, get in touch with me via Twitter, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But for now, just want to say good luck with your writing and your mental health, and may the force be with all of you.